Adidas just made a monumental investment signing Alexandra Eala to a staggering $150 million contract. But if you think that figure is the most shocking part of this story, you are only at the very beginning. Before any brand commits that kind of capital, something truly seismic has to happen. It takes an event so undeniable, a talent so commercially potent, that it compels the boardrooms of the world's largest athletic corporations to stop everything and pay immediate attention. And that is precisely what Alexandra Eala accomplished. Her achievement was about far more than just shattering jersey sales records. It was about demolishing a barrier. She utterly destroyed the glass ceiling that the establishment of women's tennis insisted was unbreakable for someone like her. Now the financial world is aggressively pursuing the very same young woman who was once told she never even belonged in the conversation. This entire narrative goes much deeper than a simple endorsement deal, so stay right with us. In the journey of every legendary athlete, there is a specific moment when the world is forced to stop underestimating their greatness. In the year 2025, on a sun-drenched March afternoon in Miami, Florida, Alex experienced that exact moment. To fully grasp the monumental significance of that day and understand how it single-handedly reshaped the commercial landscape of women's tennis, we must journey back to her origins. Alexandra Eala's childhood unfolded in the Philippines, a nation completely captivated by the titans of boxing and basketball, epitomized by the revered Manny Pacquiao. Tennis was an afterthought. For Filipinos, tennis was largely a spectator sport, not one where their own were expected to compete and triumph on the global stage. It was widely perceived as the exclusive domain of Russians, Americans, and Europeans. The prevailing notion was that young women from Manila were simply not destined to stand on the same hallowed courts as the global elite and emerge victorious. Fortunately, that was a message Alexandra Eala never bothered to internalize. At the astonishingly young age of just 8, she secured her first professional endorsement contract with Globe Telecom, a telecommunications giant in the Philippines. That's right, 8 years old. Long before most children even begin to contemplate their future careers, Alexandra Eala was already being identified as a prodigy with exceptional talent. Globe Telecom recognized it. Her parents, of course, recognized it. And her extraordinary gift captured the attention of one of the most prestigious tennis training institutions on the planet, the world-renowned Rafa Nadal Academy, in Mallorca, Spain. The academy saw her potential without hesitation and extended a full scholarship which demanded she travel thousands of miles from home to chase a dream that seemed almost impossible. As just a young girl, she made the monumental journey from the Philippines to Spain, equipped with little more than a backpack, a tennis racket, and an unwavering conviction that she truly belonged. The years at the Nadal Academy were anything but glamorous. Those years were defined by a relentless grind and a profound sense of isolation. Grueling 6-hour training days followed by lonely evenings in anonymous hotel rooms in cities that no one back home had ever heard of. This was the period where she faced the bitter disappointment of losing on an international stage, only to find the deep resilience to show up and train even harder the very next day. But through all of that struggle, something truly special was beginning to take shape. Her results on court started showing faint glimmers of the brilliance that would soon become a roaring fire impossible to ignore. Even during those formative under-the-radar years, Eala made history as the very first Filipino to ever capture a Grand Slam junior singles championship, achieving this milestone by winning the Junior US Open title in 2022. Major brands like Nike, Babolat Globe, and the Bank of the Philippine Islands, her sponsors at the time, were all watching with keen interest. While they knew they had a unique athlete on their hands, not even they could have predicted the incredible explosion that was about to occur. That historic junior Grand Slam victory, as it turned out, was merely the opening act for a much grander performance. Consider this question for a moment. When was the last time an athlete from Southeast Asia broke into the elite echelons of professional tennis with such an unyielding refusal to be defeated? Until Alexandra Eala burst onto the scene, the answer was quite simply, never. This brings us to the Miami Open, a WTA 1000 event in March of 2025. Heading into that prestigious tournament, Alexandra Eala held a world ranking of 140th. She gained entry only by receiving a wildcard invitation, an opportunity that many observers viewed as a generous, almost charitable gesture for a promising young player who hadn't yet fully earned her spot in the main draw on merit alone. The general consensus was that she would pick up some valuable tour-level experience and then quietly make her exit, bowing out gracefully in either the first or at best the second round. But nobody handed her that script. In her opening match, Eala stunned the tennis world by defeating former French Open champion Jeļena Ostapenko. The audience was certainly intrigued, though not completely shocked. Upsets, after all, are a fundamental part of the sport. Then, in the second round, she triumphed over the reigning Australian Open champion Madison Keys. At that point, the world was listening intently. What followed was the match that quite literally caused the internet to explode. Her opponent was Iga Świątek, the world number 2 and a winner of 5 Grand Slam titles, widely regarded as one of the most dominant forces in the modern history of women's tennis. She is the very athlete that coaches around the world point to as the gold standard, the ultimate benchmark for excellence and execution in the game today. When they faced off in the quarterfinals, Eala defeated her in straight sets. As the final winning point landed, a stunned silence fell over the entire Miami arena for 3 full seconds, before the stadium absolutely erupted in a deafening roar. Filipino fans who had journeyed from every corner of the globe to witness this moment were openly weeping with overwhelming joy in the stands. Back in Manila, where it was 2 o'clock in the morning, people were screaming with elation in their living rooms, completely captivated by their television screens. Social media didn't just light up, it completely detonated. In a matter of hours, Alex Eala was the top trending topic in 17 different nations. She had advanced to the semi-finals of a WTA 1000 event, becoming the first player from the Philippines in the history of the sport to ever achieve such a monumental feat. In the course of a single WTA tournament, she became the very first wildcard entrant to defeat 3 major champions in commanding straight-set victories. 1 wildcard entry, 3 defeated champions, 3 consecutive flawless sets. It was a feat no one had ever accomplished before. But the full story, the one the sports headlines failed to truly capture, was unfolding away from the court. The corporate boardrooms were paying extremely close attention. They observed that merchandise was selling at a remarkable rate during her phenomenal run in Miami. The demand for Eala's limited edition collaborative apparel, her signature red kits, and the unique Sampaguita hair tie, along with all her Nike gear, experienced a phenomenal spike in demand that Nike's analytics department hadn't recorded from a female tennis athlete in several years. Her partnership with Nike and Vogue Philippines sold out entirely within mere hours of its announcement. Consequently, the company flew her directly to its global headquarters in Beaverton, Oregon, the very heart of the brand. There, inside the legendary Ambassador Tunnel, her photograph was prominently displayed next to sports icons like Carlos Alcaraz and Aryna Sabalenka. The young athlete who arrived as a wildcard was now evolving into a commercial force of nature, redefining categories. At that very moment, the much larger predators of the industry began to circle. This is the point where the narrative takes a dramatic turn, one that none of the market analysts, the WTA, or even Nike could have possibly foreseen. Following Miami, Eala's incredible momentum did not wane. She kept on competing across the tour. She kept on winning. She carved her name in history as the first Filipino player to capture a professional WTA-level singles championship, securing her inaugural WTA 125 title at the Guadalajara Open in September of 2025. To celebrate her debut at Wimbledon, Nike crafted a bespoke Sampaguita floral hair tie designed exclusively for her highly anticipated center court appearance. During her inaugural US Open, she broke yet another barrier, becoming the first Filipino player in the entire Open era to secure a main draw match victory at a Grand Slam. With each new historic milestone she achieved, there was a corresponding and massive surge in the demand for her associated merchandise. But it was one particular number that fundamentally altered the entire landscape. The sales figure for her signature jersey was the catalyst that ignited commercial discussions at the very highest corporate levels. Georgina Camos, a renowned artist from the Philippines, was the creator of the limited edition Nike Full Bloom shirt, a design inspired by Eala that achieved phenomenal sales success. In the Philippines, this shirt became more than an item of clothing. It transformed into a cultural icon. Long before dawn, queues of fans began forming outside retail locations. On the official launch day, the global online store crashed 3 different times under the immense traffic. Within just 48 hours, the shirt was already appearing on resale markets for 3 to 4 times its original retail price. The overwhelming reaction to this limited edition line from Nike, which beautifully featured the Sampaguita flower against a tennis court design celebrating Eala's Filipino heritage, was entirely unlike anything the corporation had ever experienced from a tennis player at her specific ranking. While commentating at a tennis event in London, Sky Sports host Gigi Salman perfectly encapsulated her magnetic appeal, stating that she may in fact already be the single biggest star when measured by the masses who follow her. The biggest star, the absolute biggest, not merely one among the largest. When those words were broadcast, Nike was certainly not the only entity listening intently. The story being told by the momentum of her merchandise sales transcended mere on-court rankings. Elite athletes like Coco Gauff, Iga Świątek, and Aryna Sabalenka each possessed enormous global fan bases and were at the absolute top of the sport. Yet Eala was successfully selling products in key markets that even these formidable competitors had not managed to fully capture. These untapped territories included the extensive Filipino diaspora, located across the United States, Canada, the Middle East, Europe, and Australia, as well as the rapidly growing Southeast Asian market. Eala's jerseys were now being purchased by an audience of nearly 100 million people in the Philippines alone, a great many of whom had never before owned any professional tennis clothing. Following her sensational 2022 US Open Junior victory, industry experts began drawing compelling comparisons between her commercial potential and the career path of Emma Raducanu. Because both of these athletes possessed enormous fan bases in the highly profitable markets of the UK and across Asia, combined with Eala's unique global appeal rooted in the Philippines, certain investment firms were captivated by her narrative and recognized these exact commercial parallels. As a direct result, Eala became a primary target for major companies seeking a dynamic new brand ambassador. It was at this juncture that Adidas made its decisive move. But before we dive into the $150 million offer, it is vital to understand why Adidas in particular came knocking so aggressively. Because this narrative is about far more than just a financial negotiation. This is a story about profound corporate strategy. To fully appreciate the logic behind Adidas's decision, one must first understand the fierce battle that has been raging within the sportswear industry for the past decade. Adidas and Nike are far more than two companies competing with one another. They are competing empires, each one relentlessly vying for total market supremacy, profound cultural significance, and the loyalty of the next generation of sports fans. Nike had been methodically building something extraordinary in women's tennis, and their alliance with Eala was swiftly becoming one of their most discussed and celebrated athlete partnerships. The connection was commercially explosive, refreshingly authentic, and culturally profound in ways that a marketing budget could never fully manufacture on its own. After carefully observing this entire situation unfold, Adidas made a strategic choice. They were not going to passively wait for Eala's brand to become even more powerful. They had no intention of standing by and watching Nike construct a new dynasty around this sensational athlete, regardless of what her final decision might be. They were determined to make a move that was fast, definitive, and involved a figure so significant that it would command global headlines $150 million. That astronomical sum was not a figure plucked from thin air. The team at Adidas had meticulously crunched every number. They pored over analytics on merchandise sales, carefully examined social media engagement metrics, and assessed Eala's expansive global influence among Filipino communities worldwide. They also factored in her rapidly growing and dedicated fan base across the most critical Asian markets. Added to this were her unforgettable viral moments, which effortlessly cut through every linguistic barrier and demographic division. Considering she was only 20 years of age, their projections pointed toward a career trajectory that could span another 15 or even 20 years at the absolute zenith of professional tennis. Furthermore, they had deeply considered what she represented far beyond the tennis court. Eala was not merely an athlete, she had become an undeniable symbol. At her core, she was the girl from Manila who honed her skills in Mallorca and captured the imagination of the entire world. With her hair held back by a signature tie, she embodied a powerful combination of strength, elegance, and unwavering discipline. Eala herself had articulated her greater ambitions clearly. She stated, "I would truly love to believe that my efforts are making a significant impact. This is genuinely the only platform I have to serve my country and inspire meaningful positive change, like motivating more people to start playing or to follow women's tennis more closely." That single statement alone was worth more than 100 conventional marketing campaigns. No brand on earth could artificially manufacture that level of sincerity. That raw, authentic passion for her homeland, for the game itself, and for the larger purpose behind everything she was accomplishing was simply priceless. And it was for precisely that reason that Adidas immediately reached for their checkbook. In the high-stakes world of sports endorsements, Authenticity stands as the most precious and exceedingly rare form of currency. And so, the one question on everyone's mind was remarkably simple. Was she going to accept this historic offer? And for the young woman who had consistently played for something far greater than a paycheck, what would saying yes truly signify? The moment the news broke on that fateful Tuesday morning, the entire tennis world became sharply divided. Adidas had pledged a significant investment into grassroots tennis initiatives across Southeast Asia, designating the Philippines as the primary launch market for this program. The deal itself included a landmark $150 million multi-year partnership. It also featured a coveted global ambassador role, a signature line of tennis apparel, and extensive advertising campaigns slated to run across Asia, Europe, and North America. The public reaction was both overwhelming and immediate. Social media platforms were instantly flooded with a powerful mix of immense pride and sheer disbelief from her Filipino supporters. For many, the numbers were simply too vast to comprehend. $150 million seemed too monumental, too life-altering a figure you'd associate with athletes from other places. It was a sum reserved for sports stars from nations and disciplines that had historically commanded far more mainstream global attention, and yet the news was entirely real. The response emerging from within the broader tennis establishment was considerably more complex. A significant portion celebrated the deal, pointing to Eala's undeniable marketability and her unique ability to grow the sport in regions where professional tennis has traditionally struggled to gain a foothold. However, others displayed considerable skepticism. Could a player who had just barely cracked the top 30 truly command such a massive investment? Was this groundbreaking agreement actually about her tennis prowess? Or was it fundamentally about tapping into the diaspora dollar, the lucrative Filipino market, and a powerful cultural phenomenon? But to focus solely on those questions was to fundamentally misunderstand the situation. It was true that Eala had not yet secured a position inside the top 20, nor had she captured a premier-level WTA Tour title. Nevertheless, there was a compelling and overriding reason why she had arguably become the most sought-after choice for advertisers looking to sign the next great tennis influencer. The explanation was straightforward. The market was telling a profoundly different story than the official rankings were. And in the universal language of global commerce, the market's voice is always the one that ultimately wins. Her recent visit to Nike's world headquarters had already dramatically raised the stakes. Her portraits were immortalized in the brand's history tunnel, placed alongside other elite Nike global ambassadors from every imaginable sport. A caption on one of her displays read, "History in full bloom." A simple selfie taken with her Filipino admirers, set against the backdrop of consistently packed stadiums at every tournament she entered, particularly in Oceania. And the Middle East underscored her meteoric international celebrity. After analyzing those very images, the executives at Adidas came to a decisive conclusion that history deserved a new and more prominent home. When the news that the contract was officially signed finally reached the Philippines, it was perceived as something far more significant than a business deal. It felt like a national coronation. Because the true record she had just shattered wasn't one that could be quantified by jersey sales. It was measured instead by what she proved was achievable for others to dream of. So, for a moment, let us set aside the astonishing financial figures. Let's temporarily forget the merchandise, the contracts, and the high-level boardroom discussions. Let's focus on what this monumental event truly signifies. Alex Eala is 20 years old. It has been less than a decade since she first embarked on her professional journey. She carries the collective hopes and dreams of over 100 million people hailing from a country that has never before produced a tennis superstar of this magnitude. She trains tirelessly in conditions that would send most of us running for shade. She competes head-to-head against athletes who have been meticulously molded since early childhood by extensive teams of specialized coaches and sports scientists. And she does all of this while traveling to the farthest corners of the globe, often completely on her own. And through it all, as confirmed by everyone who has encountered her, she consistently maintains a truly remarkable humility. As early as 8 years old, Globe Telecom recognized this unique spark. Later during her formative teenage years, renowned racket maker Babolat also identified that immense potential. Subsequently, after witnessing her incredible talent, Nike brought her to Oregon, immortalizing her image in the exact same tunnel that features legends like Carlos Alcaraz. Now, having observed this meteoric rise, Adidas has entered the scene, attaching a figure to her name that is far too significant for anyone to possibly disregard. Yet, there is an intangible quality to Alex Eala that no contract, regardless of its size, can ever fully encapsulate. She once stated that her core ambitions have not wavered in the slightest. She has always maintained that she harbors incredibly lofty dreams. Securing Grand Slam titles has perpetually been one of her primary goals. Reaching the absolute pinnacle of the sport, becoming the very best, has always been another one of those ultimate aspirations. This latest development, in my estimation, has arrived at the perfect time. The Grand Slams are the first priority. Those are the genuine objectives. The $150 million is not the destination. It is the high-octane fuel for the journey. The world is finally grasping that investing in her remarkable odyssey is an exceptionally worthy endeavor. Her story needs to resonate with every young girl in Manila, Cebu, Davao, and within every single barangay, where access to tennis courts remains an unaffordable luxury for the vast majority of families. And it is this particular aspect of her narrative that deserves our most profound attention. Adidas did not merely acquire the endorsement of a tennis player. They invested in a powerful and growing movement. This is a movement ignited by a determined girl who left home at the age of 13, equipped with only a racket and a powerful dream. She trained relentlessly in Mallorca until her arms ached with exhaustion, then strode confidently onto the courts of the world's most significant tournaments and refused, with absolute conviction, to be anything less than extraordinary. This is the modest, disciplined, and beautiful movement she is credited with pioneering. The record-breaking jersey sales were entirely authentic. The commercial impact she generated was substantial and undeniable. The $150 million was very real. Yet her legacy will inevitably outlast the monetary figures in any contract. The entire world is now paying close attention to Alex Eala because she does not simply make an appearance. She puts on a spectacular performance, carrying her heritage, her fierce ambition, and her undeniable grace onto every single court she steps upon. So, I will leave you with this question. Was a jersey sales record the sole motivation behind the $150 million Adidas deal? Or was it the definitive moment when the entire sports world finally had to acknowledge that the Philippines had cultivated something truly unprecedented? Drop your answer in the comments below because this conversation is just getting started. Alex Eala's rise from relative unknown to a prominent figure on global balance sheets has been nothing short of meteoric. From a wildcard entry in Miami to having her portrait on the wall at Nike's global headquarters, from securing a championship title in Guadalajara to being the subject of a $150 million negotiation with Adidas, her remarkable ascent is not some fanciful fairy tale. It is a real-world masterclass in what happens when exceptional skill converges with an unwavering, unbreakable belief. The young woman from Manila achieved far more than just shattering a jersey record. At only 20 years old, she has completely obliterated a glass ceiling. We are dedicated to covering the narratives behind the headlines, the intense drama, the powerful emotion, and those transformative moments that redefine what is considered possible.